As if the news yesterday wasn't enough, Biden's chance of becoming the Democratic nominee has dropped to a low 24%. Moreover, his chance on Polymarket of winning the presidential election is 7%, and he is the incumbent. These are like Bob Menendez odds of winning re-election. And as you can see here, Kamala has a 19% chance of winning, so she will likely replace Biden as the nominee. And there are a few reasons why I think this. Before that, I'd just like to say that I'm the only channel that has predicted that Biden would step down time and time again since the original debate performance. So if you want accurate news from the best, make sure to subscribe today to join the 1%. And by the way, if you thought I was serious about being the best, I'm just kidding, okay? To everyone who's crybaby out there. But I am the one who's been predicting time and time again that Biden would drop out. So, I like to think I'm pretty trustworthy on this topic. And now, back to the news. First, the calls for Biden to drop out have increased to 23, with Adam Schiff, likely a future senator from California, calling on Biden to drop out. Additionally, Biden said he'd consider dropping out if a medical condition emerged. And at the same time, Biden now has COVID, so that could be the perfect excuse to drop out. And also, the Trump campaign chief accuses Democrats of attempted coup against Biden. If the Trump campaign chief doesn't want Biden to drop out, that likely means Trump stands a better chance against Biden than he does against Harris. Additionally, while donors are shying away from Biden and leaning more towards Harris, other donors are choosing Donald Trump, such as Bill Ackman and Elon Musk. So with all those at stake, it seems like Joe Biden will be replaced. Additionally, if that wasn't enough, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Hakeem Jeffries all seem to want Biden to drop out. And Jeffries is the leader of the House Democrats. Pelosi was the leader of the House Democrats and still holds a lot of influence. And Schumer is the leader of the Senate Democrats. So all three have a ton of influence in Congress. And for that reason, it is likely that Biden will drop out. He'll try to save face. Because, at this point, the writing is left on the walls so much so that it's not written with chalk, but it's written with graffiti. And it spells out one simple sentence: permanent imminent disaster for Biden's campaign if he stays in the race. And for that reason, Biden's left with two choices. One, face imminent disaster and likely lose this election, as you can see by national polling. Biden does not stand much of a chance at this election. Or two, save face, not run for re-election, have everyone praising him, go down in the history books as an honorable move, and essentially go down as a one-term president. Either way, he will likely be a one-term president, but in one option he saves face, and the other option he just seems greedy. So it's up to Biden to choose what he wants to do. And this polling is looking way better for Harris than it does for Biden. In fact, Schumer himself showed Biden internal polling that showed that Biden does not stand much of a chance at this election. So with that being said, it seems like Harris will replace Biden as the Democratic nominee, which is very interesting, as we haven't seen something like this happen in the recent past. And this is likely an event that will essentially go down in history, like when Lyndon Johnson didn't run for re-election. This is similar. A president who running for re-election gets replaced, essentially, drops out of the race pretty much last second. This is pretty historic. It shows how much can happen in just a few months in politics. There were 4 years leading up to this election, and most of the events have been happening in just a few months. So politics is very finicky. It's basically based on just a few months. And yeah, so now we have the safe states for both parties with Harris and Trump/Vance. So we'll start with the state of Oregon. Oregon is on the West Coast. It has a tradition for voting for Democrats, but it has been going more and more Republican in some more local races, such as governor races, etc. And even though Harris is from the West Coast, Oregon will still not be safely to the Democrats due to Trump's influence. And another thing to note is if Biden, for some reason, resigns from the presidency or is no longer fit to serve as president and Harris is the incumbent, she will likely have better odds than she currently does, so keep that in mind. The incumbency advantage is huge. And so regardless, let's go to some more states. So let's go to Texas. So Texas is another state like Oregon that will not safely go to either party, but it will go to one party pretty solidly. So Texas in polling hasn't been pretty substantial for Donald Trump, but it has been good enough to basically classify it as a Trump state. So against Harris, it would probably go to Trump by like I'd say about 7 or 8, which is similar to Ohio margins, which is our next state. J.D. Vance was picked as senator from Ohio, and for that reason, Ohio can be classified as a safe state. It went to Trump by 8%, and now that he literally has a guy from Ohio as his vice presidential pick, Ohio will go to Trump. The state of Florida, while I do think it would have been safe if Trump had picked Rubio, he picked Vance, and even though Trump's home state is Florida, it will go to him, but not by safe margins. It'll go to him by maybe 7 or 8 percentage points. It did go to him by 3.4 in 2020, an increase from 2016. It'll probably go to him by another 3 percentage point increase in 2024. So now we get to the state of Colorado. So the state of Colorado went to Biden by 13.5, while it went to Clinton by only 5. And let's remember, Gary Johnson was a vote splitter in the 2016 election, likely taking more votes away from Trump. So New Mexico probably had similar odds as Colorado, and it is similar here once more. So as we see in polling from Colorado, Biden leads Trump, but that was pre-debate, and in New Mexico, it tells a completely different story. Also pre-debate, but Biden only leads Trump by 1. So with that being said, Harris would lead Trump in the state of Colorado, but we can't really classify New Mexico just yet. It seems like New Mexico will be a little closer than Colorado. However, Harris, unlike Biden, is a minority herself, and for that reason will likely increase turnout among African Americans and Asian Americans, and for that reason, she will likely do better in cities than Biden does in terms of turnout itself. So we need to keep that in mind. So now we get to New Jersey. New Jersey is a state where the Democrats in the state have been marred with controversy. Bob Menendez has a scandal of his own. Phil Murphy tried to prop up his wife for the Senate seat. And New Jersey just has a long history of being dominated by party bosses. But nonetheless, Harris will win the state of New Jersey, but not by margins that Biden won it back in 2020. New Jersey will get closer and closer, and remember, polling in New Jersey has been going more and more to Republicans. So with that being said, New Jersey will be not safely to the Democrats, but it will go to Harris. So now we get to Virginia, where the minority turnout increase will actually significantly help Harris. So this turnout increase will probably make Virginia pretty much a tilt state for both sides. I could see it going either way, and recent polling indicates that Trump does actually lead Harris in the state of Virginia by about +4. So Trump leads Harris, even though Harris will increase turnout, and he gets to 231 electoral votes. So remember, the state of Virginia is a state that went to Biden by 10 percentage points, went to Clinton by 5. Virginia going to Trump already reeks of disaster for the Democrats. They're essentially grasping at straws by picking Harris. But they'll get another 5 electoral votes with the state of New Mexico, which will tilt towards Harris. So now let's go to the Northeast, where if the Democrats lose the Northeast, they lose this election. Remember, even though the Northeast doesn't offer many electoral votes, it almost always goes to the Democrats, the Northeast and the West Coast. So the Northeast going to Trump would basically say that this will be a disastrous election. I do think New Hampshire will go to Trump based on recent polling. As you can see, New Hampshire has been going more and more towards Donald Trump, but Maine will go to Harris. It'll be a tilt state like New Mexico, but it'll go to Harris nonetheless. Maine second, as a consolation, will go to Trump, as it did back in 2020 as well as 2016. Now we get to what I consider to be one of the closer swing states, which is the state of Minnesota. Minnesota has been called the California of the Midwest, but it is going to Donald Trump in recent polling. I do think Harris will do slightly better in the state of Minnesota. And if we go to Polymarket, Minnesota is likely to go to the Democrats. So Minnesota will go to Harris, but by only tilt margins. It is interesting that Virginia will flip, but Minnesota won't. But remember, Senate and governor races in Minnesota have been way less competitive than races in Virginia, because Minnesota has been building more and more of a Democrat base. I remember their own state house and state senate have passed a lot of bills and are very popular in the state. So for that reason, Harris will win the state of Minnesota. However, Trump picks up the state of North Carolina. North Carolina will not be a tilt state, but it'll be rather close. North Carolina has been going less and less towards the Republican Party in a pretty substantial manner, but it will still go to Donald Trump due to Harris's unpopularity as well as Biden's unpopularity. Because remember, Harris isn't some popular candidate either. Trump isn't the most popular. himself. But Harris has a large net disapproval. This has been decreasing more and more ever since people have basically juxtaposed her with Biden. But her disapproval is pretty substantial for a vice president. And Trump's disapproval is pretty similar, honestly. And that's Trump's biggest downside, his disapproval rating. So the fact that Trump's disapproval and Harris's are pretty similar basically says that Trump will likely defeat Kamala Harris because presidents typically have higher disapproval than vice presidents. As we can see, Mike Pence, until he certified the election results, was pretty favorable until, you see the election actually happened. And then he became very unfavorable due to Republicans not liking him and also Democrats not liking him. Republicans didn't like him because he certified the results, and Democrats didn't like him because he's a Republican and he aligns with many Republican values. So regardless, let's continue with the predictions, starting with Michigan. So Michigan's a state that Polymarket has as likely going to Donald Trump, even though 538 does have Michigan likely going to President Biden, and in this case, likely going to Harris. But it will go to Donald Trump. Recent polling has been indicating that Trump may do better in the state of Michigan. As you can see, he'll probably win by about 1 or 2 percentage points against Harris, which is enough for him to win. And now we go to Wisconsin, where Trump has a very substantial lead. Republicans have done well in Wisconsin in the past in terms of governor elections, Senate elections, etc. Wisconsin and Republicans have gotten along, unlike the state of Minnesota, but not to the extent where Republicans have won in states like Ohio. But regardless, polling in Wisconsin has been very good for Trump, where Trump is leading, and he'll likely lead Harris by a similar margin. I think Trump will do better in the Midwest than Harris does. Harris was an attorney by trade. Trump, he was a real estate guy, but his thing, his shtick, essentially, is resonating with middle class people, even though he isn't middle class himself. Attorneys don't really do a good job at that, especially prosecutors, because they're the ones putting people in jail. So for that reason, Trump will do better in the Midwest, and he'll also win the state of Pennsylvania for this reason. So Polymarket also has a substantial lead for Trump in Pennsylvania, and polls are telling a similar story. So as you can see here, Trump is increasing his lead. He has +7 over Harris in Pennsylvania. So now we'll go to the West Coast. So Harris is from the West Coast, so she'll probably do better than Biden in the states of Nevada and Arizona, yet Trump will still win in these two states. These two states have narrowed up a little bit from yesterday, and that's because of the larger chance that Harris will be the nominee. So people are realizing Harris is from the West Coast, she resonates more with West Coast voters. She'll get some votes in the West Coast, but Trump will still win Nevada and Arizona. Polling is very good for him in both of those states. As you can see, Nevada, Trump leads by +10 against Harris. And in Arizona, Trump leads by similar margins, +6 against Harris. So he wins in those two states. And lastly, we get to Georgia, which is a southern state. It has gone to Republicans many, many times, but it went to Biden in a shocker in 2020. Regardless, it will likely go to Trump in 2024. As you can see, he leads by about +10 against Harris. So for that reason, Trump will win. He'll win Nebraska second. 330 to 208 against Kamala Harris, and Trump wins this election. And one thing to note is if Biden picked a more popular vice president, it would likely be a more competitive race. But since Biden picked Harris, that is likely one of the reasons Biden could stay in, because Harris polls even lower than Biden. But maybe if Harris is the official nominee, she'll do better. But regardless, stay tuned for future predictions. Thank you for watching.